Hello. This is the second of the 4 reviews that are posted so far. There's going to be 6 in total. We already kind of covered a problem like number 1 in midterm review number 1. So I'm going to have you refer to question 8 on this one, and you can also look at your unit 2 day. I think it's day 1. See, it's unit 2 in the notes if you want. So on to question 2. All right, again, we covered something like this in the previous video. It was, let me find the question. Okay, it's like question number 9 on the first review. So if you refer to the video I did beforehand, just remember factors and opposites are opposite. Factors and zeros are opposites of each other. Question 3, that is just like, I believe, question number 4 on the previous video, review. So refer to that question. And again, remember this is inverse, so we're looking for a y value, not an x value. All right, question 4. That's also like one of the problems we did for the previous one. That's going to be like question number 3 on the previous video and the previous midterm review. So refer to that. So let's look at question 5. That 5 through 10 are going to be the ones that are a little bit different from the previous problems. So question 5 says a polynomial is divided by x plus 5. The quotient is x squared plus 3x minus 14 plus 88 over x plus 5. Which of the following must be true? And it gives you a list of options. And again, your answers are scrambled up, so just be mindful of that as you're picking it. P of negative 5 is 88. P of negative 5 does not exist. P of 0 is negative 8, and P of 0 is 4. So let's interpret this problem. First thing you want to look at is, it says P of x is divided by x plus 5. And it says the quotient is x squared plus 3x minus 14 plus 88 over x plus 5. Well, remember that the quotient is not p, it's a different function, okay? But the original function, if I plug in negative 5, what would I get? Well, remember the remainder theorem says that whatever I plug in into a function, that output is going to be my remainder. So if you look at x plus 5, if I'm dividing by x plus 5, then we switch that to negative 5, plug that in, look at your output. I don't care about the x squared, the 3x minus 4. What's my remainder, okay? Where does the remainder fall on this problem? That would be your answer. So whatever the remainder is, that's what P of negative 5 should equal. Okay, question number 6. Table below shows ordered pairs that belong to a polynomial function. If f of x is a cubic polynomial, which conclusion is valid? Well, I don't really care about the cubic. I just want to look at the outputs here. So if you notice that negative 3, negative 2, positive 1, and negative 1 and 0, they all give me outputs of negative 8, 3, 0, and 3. These are my remainders. Those are my values when I plug these in, aka remainders. So f of negative 3 gives me a remainder of negative 8. In other words, if I divide by x plus 3, I get a remainder of negative 8. If I divide by x plus 2, remember the opposite of that, I get a remainder of 3. Well, that says a remainder of 0 for x plus 2. If I divide by x plus 1, I get a remainder of 0. And if I divide by x, I get a remainder of 3. So if you look at the -1 here, it gives me an output of 0. That's a 0. And the factors and zeros have opposite signs. In order for something to be a factor, it must have a remainder of 0. So if -1's a 0, which one of these is a factor? Is it x minus 1 or x plus 1? Think about that. Okay, this problem is confusing in the way it's worded. So I'm just going to tell you right now that it gives you a function p of x cubed minus 2x squared plus 4x minus 1. It can be written as p of x equals q of x times x minus 3 plus a. Don't worry about that. Just look at the x minus 3. That's what you're dividing by. It says, what's the value of a? A is the remainder. So how do I get the remainder? Well, you can work it out using synthetic division. Remember, with synthetic division, we want to change the sign. We want to list out our coefficients. And we want to bring down the first number, multiply it by the number outside, add these two together, multiply these, add those, multiply these, and add those together. That's your remainder. So whatever those add to is your remainder. But remember, also you can get the remainder by simply taking that 3 and substituting in for the x values in the function. Still positive 3 because we switched the sign. So that should be the same number as this remainder. Okay, this problem, it gives you two functions. It says which of the following is true, and it gives you 4 different operations: f of x minus g of x, f of x times g of x, f of x plus g of x, f of x divided by g of x. Well, this is probably the longest one. This is going to take a lot of work. So here's the setup. If I subtract these two, that's going to distribute the negative. So that's going to be 4x cubed minus 14x squared plus 7x minus 3 minus x plus 3. Combine your like terms. So that's going to be 4x to the third minus 14x squared. 7x minus x is 6x. And negative 3 plus 3 is 0. So that's going to be your answer there. F of x plus g of x, that's just combining like terms. So 4x cubed minus 14x squared plus 7x minus 3 plus x minus 3 is going to be 4x cubed minus 14x squared plus 8x. And then the two negative 3's add to negative 6. F of x times g of x, you can do box method if you want. Four times 1 is 4, so 4x to the fourth, add the exponents. Negative 14x to the third, 7x squared, minus 3x. All those get multiplied by the x. Down here you have negative 3 times all the numbers, and then negative 12x to the third, 3 times 14, I believe that's 42. So it's going to be positive since they're both negative. 7 times 3 is negative 3 is negative 21, so negative 21x. And negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. So if I combine my like terms, I'll get 4x to the fourth. See, these two are going to combine to negative 16x cubed. The x squares combine to 49x squared. The x's will be negative 24x plus 9. So that's multiplication. And then division, I would use synthetic division. So let's put the 3 on the outside. Bring down the 4. 4 times 3 is 12. Negative 14 plus 12 is negative 2. Those multiply to negative 6. These add down. Remember, we're adding down here, so that's going to be 1. 1 times 3 is 3. And I get a remainder of 0. So that's going to be 4x squared. Remember, it's always one less exponent than what you start with. So x squared minus 14x plus 1. So you see them worked out there, and you can kind of use your answer choices to help you decide which one is correct. All right, hey, for this problem, for number 9, you can do the Desmos option, where you would type this into one line and then type these into subsequent lines and match up your graph. So you know how to turn your graph on just by clicking that circle there. So I'll go ahead and I'll work it out by hand too, so you can see how to do long division just as a reference. Okay, so when doing long division, we want to write it like this. We'll put the little house, put what's being divided on the outside, put what's on top and the inside. When I taught it to you, I did it with coefficients. So that's kind of how I like to do it freehand. I'll do 2, 1, negative 17, and 5. Just makes it easier for me. And then I divide these two. So 2 divided by 1, and I write that result on the top. Then I multiply 2 times 1, 2 times 3, and 2 times negative 1. After that, we are going to subtract down. And if I subtract the negative 2, that's two negatives make a positive, so I'm going to add. 2 minus 2 is 0. 1 minus 6 is negative 5. Negative 17 plus 2 is negative 15. And we bring down the 5. Next, I'm going to do negative 5 divided by 1. Multiply the negative 5 times the 1. Negative 5 times 3. And negative 5 times negative 1. And as you can see, if I change the sign and add down, remember subtraction is just doing the opposite. So this is going to be subtraction. Everything cancels. Remainder is going to be 0. So that result is going to be 2x minus 5. For this question, I don't know if it's really necessary for me to provide any help. You can graph that. So just make sure you're typing it in carefully. Use Desmos. Make sure you do 1 divided by, and then x squared minus 4. So make sure the x squared minus 4 is in there. Match that graph up to your answer choice. All right, hopefully that was of value to you. I'll continue making these if you utilize them. Remember, I'm only going to do newer problems. So if it's a repeated problem from below, from previous reviews, I'm going to skip over those.